UFC Fight Night Imavov versus Dolidze, guys. We're less than a week away, and it's time for me to give my breakdown and predictions for every single fight on this card as we look to go 3-0 undefeated on main events so far this year. We're blazing a trail. We're on a hot streak. Now, this is going to be a real competitive card when it comes to whether I'm going to get these picks right or not. There's a lot of close matchups. Some of these guys are being given layups by the UFC, but they're actually not very good. And I don't look at any of these matches as layups for the most part, as opposed to maybe a couple of them. But these are all really competitive fights. And I think that that's what we're going to get this weekend. A lot of competitive fights. And if there are any blowouts, any nasty finishes or really one-sided performances, that will impress me. So without further ado, let's get right into this. The first fight, and this couldn't be any more fitting for the Apex, as both of these guys are going to look to pop out of that conveyor belt. The battery packs are going to get popped in, they're going to get wound up, and they're going to march out like some typical NPC heavyweights. And they're going to give us a decision that we are going to forget. Jamal Pogues has fast hands. He's got good takedowns. He's a big heavyweight. Just cannot get a finish to save his life. The only issue is that his opponent is a fat welterweight. And I mean that. Like, if this guy were to take his career serious, he would not be fighting in the light heavyweight division, let alone the heavyweight division. No, he'd be fighting in the welterweight or the lightweight division. Okay? Both of these guys should be cutting down into a lighter weight class. But Thomas Peterson is puny for this division. And I know he's got a lot of finishes. As I said, he's a really good grappler. But we're talking about like a jiu-jitsu guy that doesn't even have phenomenal wrestling, that has to like really stink it up against the fence in the clinch to hope to take someone down. Once he gets you on the mat, he's pretty decent, but he's just knocking out a bunch of cans that are also fat heavyweights. And I think that Jamal Pogues, if you look at his career, he's actually shown a really good ability to wrestle. I mean, this guy ragdolled Josh Parisian, and I know that's Josh Parisian, but still, we're talking about the same ballpark kind of opponent, NPC, fat, run-of-the-mill heavyweights. And Jamal Pogues also has some really fast hands. So I am going to pick Jamal Pogues to get this win. Will he get his first UFC finish? I don't know. It's insane to me that he hasn't gotten a finish before. I mean, this guy got outstruck by Mick Parkin, who's also not very good at all. And he got outstruck by like a big margin. I don't know what the hell happened there. But Pogues is more of a grappler, which is why I'm ultimately picking him, because I think that if you can wrestle, you could probably stuff a takedown. So I'm going to go with Pogues to win this by decision. Again, we're talking about Thomas Peterson. Just look him up. The guy's not taking his career serious. Come on, what are you doing? Literally, if this guy's watching this video right now, I want to ask you, what are you doing? Do you see the top 5 in the heavyweight division? Do you understand like how you need to look, the shape that you need to be in to actually achieve a championship belt? You look at Cyril Gane, Tom Aspinall, you look at guys like Alexander Volkov, and you say to yourself, yeah, I can be a heavyweight champ. Are you out of your fucking mind? Cut down into a lighter weight class. And it's not even the fighters themselves that are totally responsible. I mean, think about the teammates that these guys have, the coaches, their family members. They're not telling them either. I mean, if I'm an MMA coach or I'm a training partner of someone like Peterson or Josh Parisian, I'm asking them, hey, seriously, like, do you want to be a champion? And I'm sure that most of these guys would say, yeah, of course. What do you mean? We all want to be a champion, right? And to that, I would say, hey, man, I would take him out of the shoulder and, hey, come on, wake up. Look at the division, okay? Look at the guys you're going to be competing with. Alexander Volkov, Sergey Pavlovich, Jelton Almeida, Cyril Gane, Robelis Despain, Francis Ngannou. There's a bit of an issue here. Look at any weight class. Any weight class is top 10. Everyone's in shape. Everyone's lean. They're taking it serious. It's only, a 1 in a million guy like Daniel Cormier that can make it to the top while being a little bit hefty, and that's very rare. That's very rare. You got to wake up, okay? I know you want to be a champion. This ain't all peaches and cream, okay? This ain't like, man, being a heavyweight's pretty cool, man. I'm going to get to eat whatever I want. No, that's not how it works, okay? You don't. You don't just get to do whatever you want. You're still a professional athlete, and not everyone is just genetically gifted to where they can be like DC and perform at a higher body fat, or, that they can be like a natural 265 and not even have to try and also be lean. Not everyone has that fortune. You got to be serious about this. Okay? It's a big problem. Again, like, I would love to ask their coaches and say, hey man, like, don't you think that you're failing this guy? You know what I mean? What the fuck is going on? Holy shit. Again, all respect to Peterson. Even Pogues could drop down a weight class. Let's just get on to the next one. It's just so hard for me to understand how these guys are so clueless. Or maybe they just don't care. Maybe they just genuinely just like to get in the cage and fight, and they don't really care about the outcome. They don't care about being champ. They're just a fighter's fighter. But then at least knock people out and impose your will, and don't just float around the octagon, freaking jabbing once every 2 minutes and go into decisions at heavyweight. So it's like, which one are you? Do you want to be a champ, or do you like to fight? If you like to fight, then why are you just going through the motions and going to these boring-ass titter-tat, patter-pat, patty-wap decisions? Okay? Goodness gracious, man. I mean, at least Taito Ivasa is consistent. At least that guy goes out and slugs. Let's say Jamal Pogues by decision. Maybe he takes down the small Thomas Peterson and just rides him out for 3 rounds, or maybe gets his first ever KO. I don't really know too much about Thomas Peterson's striking, but I can't imagine it's very good. So let's get on to the next one. Blake Bilder versus JeongYeong Lee. JeongYeong Lee is a guy that won the road to the UFC. But the guys that I'm watching on that show when I rewatch these fights, they're just not very good. And JeongYeong Lee's a featherweight. He's 5'10". He's going to have a serious reach advantage in this one, but he's still kind of small. He's kind of frail for the weight class. Whereas Blake Bilder, yes, he lost to the Walmart version of Roman Dolidze, Kyle Nelson, in his last outing, and he just looked kind of mediocre. Blake Bilder's a big, sturdy featherweight. He extends all the way on his punches. He's willing to take a couple of shots. As the fight progresses, I think that we're going to see him like kind of step on the gas and bite down on the mouthpiece and just start to throw. And I think that he's just going to bully around JeongYeong Lee, who, again, despite being lean and having a reach advantage and not being short for a featherweight, he's just a little bit frail and kind of spent half of his last fight stuffing takedowns up against the fence against a really small guy. I think Blake Bilder's just going to win this based on being able to take a shot. And once he gets used to the power of JeongYeong Lee, who doesn't have like a crazy arsenal either. He's just kind of a real simple striker, throws a 1-2. Still looks like he has the octagon jitters. Once we see Blake Bilder get used to the power and the speed, I think he's going to lose respect for JeongYeong Lee, and I think he's going to start to walk him down a little bit. It's going to be a close back and forth fight. I think the speed advantage is with JeongYeong Lee, but again, nothing special, and Blake Bilder just seems like he's going to, I don't know, the guy has a shorter reach on paper, but it just looks like he's got a longer reach. He's going to be extending on his punches, landing big shots. He has some pop in his hands. He's a good wrestler. He's like twice as big as JeongYeong Lee's last opponents. And I think he may be able to level change too. So I'm going to go with a 29-28 decision win for Blake Bilder, winning this fight based on the physicality for the most part. I think he's going to lose the first round, maybe win the second and win the third. Very close, razor close decision for Blake Bilder. Let's get on to the next one. Themba Gorimbo's back, and he's fighting Pete Rodriguez. Listen, I mean, it's in the stars. Themba Gorimbo's already won the fight. I don't really have to break this one down, but if you really want me to, I'll just say this. Pete Rodriguez is still a small fry for the welterweight division. If you don't know Pete Rodriguez, this is the guy that just knocked out Mike Jackson brutally with a knee, but Mike Jackson may be one of the worst fighters in UFC history. I mean, his only claim to fame is beating up CM Punk. I mean, this guy got held down by a old retired Jake Shields at the UFC PI. He got absolutely blitzkrieged by Pete Rodriguez, and Pete Rodriguez is a good boxer. If Themba Gorimbo can't take him down, Pete Rodriguez is going to win this fight. I mean, he's got some pop. He's a sturdy guy, but he's still a little bit flabby for the division. He's still a little bit small. And Themba's actually kind of a big guy for the welterweight division. He has a really long reach. He's tall. And of course, he's got the plot armor. He's got The Rock on his side. I think The Rock's probably going to walk him out to this one. But The Rock gave this man a house. listen, you can say what you want. We're just living in Themba's world. And if this guy can get The Rock to give him a house, he can get Pete Rodriguez to give him the win. And I honestly think that Themba's going to go out there, take Pete Rodriguez down, who hasn't really shown any great grappling ability. I'm not saying he's gotten taken down left and right, but we're talking about a smaller guy in this division. Whereas Themba Gorimbo, he just got a nice win over Takashi Saito. Takashi Saito, if you don't know him, he's this, I don't even know how to describe him. He's a guy that fought Gunnar Nelson and got his back taken for 3 rounds and didn't do anything. He's like a survivor, all right? Takashi Saito, all this man does, his only objective in fights is just not to get finished. But he's not all that great. He's just a tough out. He's a real tough out. Themba Gorimbo knocked him down, dominated him in the first round, took him down at will, and got really close to a couple of submissions. And I think that Themba Gorimbo, he's had a long time off. He's extremely hungry for this one, and I'm sure Pete Rodriguez is too. I think he's going to take down Pete Rodriguez. He's going to impose his will, and I think I'm going to pick him by decision. He's going to get the decision win, but he's in a little bit of danger on the feet because he's open. He's not got the crispest striking, but I'm expecting a lot of finesse in this one. I think that he's going to finesse Pete Rodriguez and get himself the win. Decision for Themba Gorimbo, the Cinderella Man. And on to the next one. We have Charles Johnson versus Azat Maksum. So Azat Maksum is undefeated. We're talking 18-0. Is this guy the real deal? I don't think so, to be honest. I mean, 17-0, my bad. He's only got 1 fight in the UFC, but Charles Johnson, just one of those names you hear and you're like, oh, Charles Johnson, I swear I've heard that like 50 times on everyone's other prediction videos, but you always forget it because he doesn't win and his fights suck. He's a Mr. Split Decision Machine merchant, and the only finish he has in his UFC career is over Jimmy Flick, who's not that great. And I'm looking at the trajectory of both of these guys' careers. We're talking about Azat Maksum, 17-0, on the up and up, hungry, undefeated. He still feels like he's invincible. And then you have Charles Johnson that like loses based on decision and can't impose his will. And like, who is he losing to? He's losing to Ode Osborne. Yeah, that's not very special. He lost to Muhammad Mokaev. Not bad. Not a bad look. Cody Durden, not a bad look. Rafael Estevam, that's not a good look, right? I think Azat Maksum is going to have the speed advantage. He's a pretty slick striker. Outstriking Tyson Nam is not that great, but at least it's a good sign, and I believe, now, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he may have some grappling in him. I mean, his name is Azat Maksum. Something tells me this guy can shoot a takedown, and I'm going to pick him based on knowing he has good striking, knowing he's fast, he's undefeated, and I just have a feeling he may be able to have a takedown in here. All right, with that name, I'm pretty sure he's from Kazakhstan. So I'm going with Azat Maksum. I'm going to pick him to win this by a decision, 30-27 or 29-28. I think a lot of these fights are going to be kind of stinky, to be honest. Let's get on to the next one. Molly McCann taking on Deanna Belbita. I'm picking Molly McCann. This is a rematch. Molly McCann's won by decision the first time. Now, we know Molly McCann got embarrassed by Erin Blanchfield, and most of you guys probably don't like her. She's a loudmouth. She's like Patty Pimblett's sidekick. But she's going to win this one pretty easily. I think she's probably going to TKO Diana Belbita. The reason I'm picking her to beat Diana Belbita is because Belbita, she doesn't have any submissions in her arsenal. She's lost a ton of times by decision. All of her wins in the UFC are by decision. And the one finish that's on her record is her getting finished by submission. Whereas Molly McCann, we know she has pop. We know she knows how to impose her will. Her issue is getting subbed, okay? And I don't think she's going to get subbed in this one. So I'm going to go with Molly McCann by a decision or a TKO over Diana Belbita, who just cannot get finishes, and she doesn't have a submission arsenal. On to the next one, Charles Radtke versus Gilbert Urbina. Gilbert Urbina is going to go out there and blast through Charles Radtke, who has made a name for himself at UFC 293 after beating the legend Blood Diamond, Mike Muthetha, who is obviously one of the greatest city kickboxing strikers we've ever seen in the sport. Just so happens that he sucks, and Charles Radtke couldn't even take him down. He took him down once, and just had to clinch up with him for dear life for the rest of the fight, trying to take him down, failing at taking him down. Whereas Gilbert Urbina is a massive guy that used to fight at middleweight, that's now shredded at welterweight, that knows how to impose his will, that was kind of ragdolling Bryan Battle, that has good striking too, coming off of a good KO win. Dude, Charles Radtke is not that good. All right. The only thing that's kind of all right there is the idea that he outstruck Makhmud a little bit on the feet, but that's just because Blood Diamond is so scared of the takedown that he cannot use his striking. And also Blood Diamond striking isn't even good. I know he's from City Kickboxing, and I was joking about him being a legend of City Kickboxing, but he's like the stiffest looking City Kickboxer I've ever seen in my entire life. He's got no athleticism. He's got no hand-eye coordination. I mean, the guy's just not an athlete. He's not a great striker anymore. Maybe he was back in the day. I was super worried when Volkanovski was training with him in preparation for Yair Rodriguez. Either way, man, Gilbert Urbina is a hungry, hungry man. All right, he's coming off of a beautiful body kick TKO against Orion Koski. I just pronounced the name wrong. I'm sorry. And then, of course, he lost to Bryan Battle, took that fight on short notice. But he went out there and imposed his will like a madman against Bryan Battle and had him on the ropes, picked him up, slammed him down, was teeing off on him on the ground and on the feet, fought on tough, got knocked out by Tresean Gore, fair enough, but now he's moved down a weight class. He's a big guy, 6'3". He's going to have a big reach advantage, whereas Radtke, I believe, is like 5'10". Let me just verify that. Yeah, he's 5'9", actually. I think he's going to get pieced up. I think he's going to catch spear-like front kicks to the body. And I think even if he tries to grapple, and just because we kind of look at him as a little bit of a wrestler because he was trying to take down Blood Diamond, yeah, Blood Diamond isn't good at all, and you could not take him down. So I'm going to go with Gilbert Urbina, all right? He has every advantage that you could even bring up. I mean, he took down Bryan Battle easily. Bryan Battle's not like some kind of serious litmus test for being able to out-grapple the best fighters, but he's still better than Makhmud. So I'm going to go with Gilbert Urbina, and I think I'm going to pick him to win this fight by a TKO. I'm going to go with Gilbert Urbina by a second-round TKO. On to the next one. Aliaskhab Khizriev versus Makhmud Muradov. All right? Makhmud Muradov, just a typical NPC middleweight fighter that can't impose his will. He's boys with Floyd Mayweather. That's why he has like a big Instagram following, because I guess that's like a flex where he's from or whatever. But either way, Makhmud Muradov is just not very good, man. I'm going to pick Khizriev to beat him by submission. Khizriev is undefeated from Dagestan, and I understand that he's going to get a lot of hype because he's undefeated from Dagestan, but it's not going to be super easy for him to take down Makhmud Muradov because Makhmud Muradov is like a big, sturdy middleweight. Again, he's a striker. He's got some nice long rangy kicks and whatnot, but just can't impose his will. I mean, we're talking about your typical like 6-7 strikes around type of guy, just overly patient, not getting finishes. The reason why I think that it's not going to be a walk in the park for Khizriev, even though I am picking him to win this one, and I am picking him to get this one done by submission, is because Makhmud Muradov did kind of okay against Cal Baralho, and Cal Baralho is a decent fighter in this division. Like, he may be ranked right now. He may be right outside of the rankings, but that's a guy that's got really good grappling, great blast double legs down the pipe. Khizriev has amazing takedown entries. I mean, I just watched his fight against Denis Tallulin, and he was getting pieced up on the feet. He's kind of small for the weight class. He's like tubby as well. So many guys on this card are fighting in the wrong weight class, by the way. Khizriev should be fighting at welterweight, not at middleweight. That eventually is going to come back to bite him as he moves up the rankings. He was getting pieced up by Denis Tallulin and took a little bit of time to have a lot of success with Tallulin, where I've seen JeongYeong Park and Gregory Rodriguez just pummel him the second the fight hits the mat. I guess Khizriev may not have the best ground and pound. He may just be like a slower grappler that kind of smudges you into a submission. Khizriev is going to get this one done over Makhmud Muradov. He is probably going to get hit with some big shots, but Muradov is not the same dog that Denis Tallulin is. Denis Tallulin is not good on the ground. He's been beat by every grappler he's ever fought. But if it's a striking battle, this guy has a good chin. He imposes his will. He marches forward and he lets his hands go, has no fear. And I just don't see Makhmud Muradov doing that. Makhmud Muradov's going to be on the outside. He's going to be throwing a kick at range. He's going to be walking around like Trevin Giles, not doing a whole lot. And then eventually he's going to make a mistake, overextend. Khizriev's going to shoot a double leg down the pipe, slow things down on the ground, eventually get a submission. But don't buy into the hype yet. He is a puny middleweight, a tubby guy, and his striking is nothing to boast about. And he's kind of old too, and he's been super inactive. This guy's only fought once since 2020. Before that, his fight in 2020 was the first fight that he had since like 2018. I mean, so he's had 2 fights in the last 6 or 7 years. That's definitely not good for him. But Muradov is just nothing special. Let's get on to the next one. Another NPC. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I have to go on a little bit of a rant right now. Natalia Silva versus Viviana Araújo. Natalia Silva, guys are simping for her. Fans are simping for her. She looked fancy against Andrea Lee, but I was really upset watching her last performance. And when I say upset, I just mean frustrated. Because a lot of people give this woman hype. I believe that she's not undefeated. She's 16-5. She's undefeated in the UFC. She's getting some hype. All flash, all feints, with nothing on it. Really, just no sting on it. No danger element. She was beating up Andrea Lee. Andrea Lee was just a sitting duck. She had nothing for Natalia Silva. And Silva's just out here, feint, trying to look all fancy and to style on her opponent. But it's like, what are you doing? How about you actually go out there and fucking hit your opponent in a goddamn fight? Okay? So I think that this is going to be really competitive. And if Natalia Silva goes out here trying to look fancy and trying to please her coaches, I know it's WMMA and she's trying to be Volkanovski out here, but at the same time, it is a fight, and you actually have to throw strikes, and it's not all just about feinting. Feinting is something that can really be useless in this game. Like, you're feinting from 15 feet away. What are you doing? You're supposed to set things up. You're supposed to get your opponent to bite on it so you can recognize their tendencies and then capitalize on that. She doesn't do that. So I think that she's going to get a decision. People are going to be freaking out about her and saying, whoa, Natalia Silva's so high level, but she's not that high level. All right. I mean, Dennis Tululan could go out there and feint. Does that mean that Dennis Tululan's on that Volk level? Does it mean that he's Israel Adesanya? No. All right. Those feints don't really mean a whole lot. I'm going with Natalia Silva by decision. I know that I'm like critiquing her, but that last performance was just so frustrating to watch. And I remember ranting and raving about it. Viviana Araújo, decision merchant, which is ultimately why I'm picking against her. Because at least Natalia Silva is much younger and she's hungrier and she has a couple of nice finishes through her career. But expect this to be a slow decision. Expect to be a little bit frustrated watching Natalia Silva just feint it up and do a whole lot of nothing. On to the next one. Randy Brown versus Muslim Salikhov. I really want to pick Muslim Salikhov here because Randy Brown, I'm not going to say it again because I've said it way too many times in this video. Let's just say it the nicest way possible. Randy Brown has high output, but no ability to get finishes. He's got no sting on his shots. His leg kicks, as fast as they may be, they're not damaging. And that's the thing about Randy Brown. It's like he's got every advantage in the book, but just cannot for the life of him really beat someone up badly. And Muslim Salikhov is going to pose a little bit of a threat to Randy Brown. That's, of course, the knockout threat. But it's the knockout threat mixed in with a wealth of experience and high-level technique. And that's where Randy Brown has struggled in the past. Every time Randy Brown has fought a guy that has both high-level technique and a lot of power, he's struggled. And I'm talking about that Jack Della Maddalena fight, right? I'm also talking about that Vicente Luque fight, the Nico Price fight. Nico Price is kind of a wild man. I wouldn't really describe him as Mr. Technical. But Randy Brown's getting wins over guys like Wellington Turman, right? He's getting wins over guys like Chaos Williams. Powerful, just not very technical. Jared Gooden. Powerful, not very technical. Alex Oliveira. That was his last impressive win on his resume. And I am going to pick Randy Brown to just kind of overwhelm Muslim Salikhov, but I don't think this is going to be that dominant. Salikhov is going to be landing big gnarly shots, expect some spinning back kicks to the body, expect some big overhands to get some respect from Randy Brown. And Randy Brown's really going to run away with this due to pitter-pat low kicks and pitter-pat body kicks. He's going to be pumping the jab out there and feinting and trying to style, but I mean, just don't expect him to really do a lot of damage in this one. So I'm going to go with Randy Brown, 30-27. But if someone does get a finish in this fight, it's probably going to be Muslim Salikhov, who's explosive, who's fast twitch, and could catch Randy Brown with something that he doesn't expect. You know, maybe it's like a spinning wheel kick to the face or a big overhand right, something like that. Because he does have KO power. He does have some sneaky, crafty speed. And don't count him out. Don't count him out. So let's get on to the next one. Co-main event. We're finally here. I love this fight. I absolutely love this fight. Renato Moicano versus Drew Dober. I'm picking Renato Moicano to win this one. And originally I was going with Drew Dober. And a big part of that had to do with me just not remembering how nasty Renato Moicano's submission game was. And how good he is at mixing and mashing his striking with his grappling, okay? He does actually have decent wrestling. He does shoot takedowns pretty frequently when he's up against these, like, gnarly strikers. And if he gets you to the mat, I mean, he's a little bit of a poor man's Oliveira, but he still has beautiful grappling, and it is really something to behold because his transitions are so quick. His ability to take the back is amazing, and he's just so good at finding finishes on the ground. He honestly reminds me of Charles Oliveira when I'm rewatching some of these fights. Like, of course, he's lost to the elite of the elite. He's lost to Rafael Fiziev. He's lost to Jose Aldo. But he has beaten guys that are on that Drew Dober level, like right outside the rankings, right? He's getting past Alexander Hernandez. He's piecing him up with long-rangey strikes. He's closing the distance. He's taking him down, and he's getting his back, and he's choking him out, right? Jai Herbert takes him down in the first round with ease, takes him down in the second round, submits him. Brad Riddell beats him up on the feet, takes his back, submits him. And I really do believe that Drew Dober, although he's got crazy KO power and he's an excellent striker, I mean, that's the way to beat him. It's to submit him. It's to mix in the takedowns, and he has been submitted many times in his career. I'm a little bit worried for Renato Moicano because he is coming off of a long layoff, and that's originally why I picked Drew Dober to win this fight, because I was thinking Renato's been injured and Drew Dober's been active, and it's a little bit of a tough ask to come back into the octagon to fight Drew Dober, of all people, that's going to put it on you from the moment the fight starts. And Renato, in my opinion, does kind of need to mix in the grappling. And a knee injury is just not something that makes me so confident in his ability to wrestle, right? I mean, that's something that you could lose over time as you're sitting out on the couch, right? I mean, he's not been putting in his hard wrestling rounds for more than, I would say, maybe 4 or 5 months. He's been out for over a year. But I still expect him to eventually close that distance, capitalize on a mistake from Drew Dober. And his striking is kind of clean, man. He's got a long reach. He's got fast hands. And I think he's going to be pretty responsible in this one. Drew Dober's coming off of a win over Ricky Glenn. Nothing to brag about. Before that, he got knocked out by Matt Frivola. Knocked out Bobby Green. Knocked out Rafael Alves. Again, there's a good chance that Drew Dober could knock out Moicano, because the way to beat Moicano is to knock him out. I mean, he's been KO'd by Aldo, TKZ, Rafael Fiziev. He's been dropped by Rafael Dos Anjos, but a lot of those finishes are from when he was a featherweight. Now that he's bulked up to lightweight, and even though he's coming off of an injury, I'm expecting him to be rejuvenated and to have a chip on his shoulder, because he's been the YouTube guy for the last year, and he's probably thinking, y'all must have forgot, man. I'm coming back. I'm going to show you guys that I'm still elite. And Dober, he's been in a lot of wars. He's been submitted by Makhachev. He's been submitted by Dariush. He's been submitted by Oliver Aubin Mercier. And when people have tried to take down Dober, they've succeeded. I mean, Brad Riddell took him down 5 times. Alexander Hernandez, despite getting finished in that fight, he took Dober down multiple times. Dober was able to get up to his feet, but Hernandez just doesn't have the same control and submission threat that Moicano does. Of course, we know Makhachev took him down, held him on the mat. And Terrence McKinney took this man down as well. So the people that have tried have succeeded. The guys that have just struck with him, of course, have ended up getting KO'd. And I just don't see Renato Moicano making that colossal mistake after a long layoff, coming off of a serious knee injury. I think he's going to like his chances where he's at his best, which is on the mat. The takedown itself might be a little bit hard to get. And of course, Drew Dober, he doesn't have to worry that much about the threat of the KO coming back in his direction, which is definitely something that's good for him because Moicano doesn't have like any crazy power. He can crack. He has a long reach too, and he's very fast. It's the punches that you don't see that usually end up hurting you. But my point is, Dober is going to be ready for the takedown. I could just see him over swinging and getting backed up to the fence after getting cracked with something good, and Moicano clinching up with him, having the frame advantage over Dober. And I think he will get that back and he will choke him out. So, yeah, I'll say Moicano gets it done in the first round by submission. But, of course, this is a very dangerous fight for him nonetheless. It's a dangerous fight for anyone that doesn't have impeccable wrestling. So, even though Moicano has good wrestling, it's not impeccable. He could get KO'd, but I'm going with Moicano. Let's get on to the main event. Now it's time for the main event. Roman Dolidze versus Nassourdine Imavov. Say a prayer for Nassourdine Imavov's opponent. He's going to need one. I think Roman Dolidze is going to get the shit beat out of him for 5 rounds. Now, I will say this. As far as getting knocked out, I think there's not really a great chance of that. If anyone gets the knockout, if anything, it's probably going to be Roman Dolidze with his big brawling, big slugging style. He's a big bruiser, really. But, man, Roman Dolidze should not be fighting Nassourdine Imavov. This is an irresponsible decision for him. He's going to get the shit beat out of him. Nassourdine Imavov is a light on his feet, super fast middleweight that doesn't telegraph his punches, that was able to tag up Sean Strickland. And I know Strickland took that fight on short notice, but Strickland on short notice is like a mythical fighter, basically. Strickland is a guy that's meant to take fights on short notice. This guy's not in the gym doing weightlifting. He's not ramping up. He's always ready. And he doesn't get injured. I don't know what it is about Sean Strickland. Dude is never injured, or he may just deal with it and suck it up. But who knows, man? Back to the point. I was watching some of Roman Dolidze's fights back, and when I say the word plotty, it does not apply more to anyone else than it does to that man Roman Dolidze, who just kind of slugs himself across the octagon, drags his back foot, and just oafs around, really. I mean, Jack Hermansson was piecing him up a little bit, and Hermansson actually does have a good kicking game, and he's able to play that like long, rangy style, the volume style, and it was working just fine. The only issue is Hermansson, the bone cruncher, the twig snapper that he is. Of course, that guy is going to be confident to grapple with anyone, and he found out the hard way. You don't go to the ground with Roman Dolidze. If Nassourdine Imavov tries to take down Roman Dolidze, just boot him out of the UFC. He doesn't deserve to fight anymore based on how dumb that would be. Hermansson went to the ground with him, got hit with a calf slicer. I mean, Roman Dolidze was just throwing us submissions left and right. At one point, he had a triangle. He looked for an arm bar. Right after that, he got the calf slicer, and he was able to get Hermansson on his stomach, and he was just beating him up, and Hermansson was totally checkmated. Dolidze's a nasty grappler. We saw what he did to Phil Hawes. Phil Hawes, another guy that made the same mistake of going to the ground with Dolidze, because, of course, Phil Hawes, that's a guy that beat Nassourdine Imavov. Phil Hawes has great wrestling, right? He's a high-level, former college wrestler, big, strong guy, thought that he would have success against the jiu-jitsu guy in Roman Dolidze, and he just got totally fucked up. Dolidze hit him with some kind of an ankle lock or something like that, blew out his knee, and Phil Hawes was on one leg, and just a sitting duck for the big bruiser Roman Dolidze, who has heavy hands. I mean, I will give Roman that credit. He's got big power. He's a big guy for that division. He's tall, and he's got a lot of muscle. And, of course, he may be a little bit stiff. He may have those arm punches, but he really does have big power. Rocked Marvin Vettori in the first minute of their fight. I mean, you got to have some nutty power to rock Marvin. But as the fight progressed, and again, we're talking about Marvin here, as the fight progressed, and it wasn't like Roman was even shooting any takedowns. That's the other thing. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Mediocre Marvin Vettori was outstriking him. And when I watched that fight live, I was under the impression that Roman was actually winning. But as soon as I went back to rewatch it, the week of that fight, I saw that actually Roman was like missing half of his shots and Marvin outstruck him. And I rewatched it yesterday. And I mean, we know Marvin Vettori is not a guy that has high fight IQ. We know that he's kind of mediocre on the feet. Whatever his game plan is going into a fight, no matter what his opponent does, he will not be able to adjust to it. He's just going to stick to that first initial game plan. Roman Dolidze, unable to adjust to Marvin Vettori, and just insisted on throwing big, meaty right hands at him the whole time. Had 1 minute of real success in the first round, and then just got in a little tit-for-tat battle where Marvin was, you know, I mean, I always talk about Marvin Vettori making a mistake at trying to be Mr. Technical and Tactical, when in reality, Marvin Vettori should just go barge mode and run at people chin first, because he's never going to get knocked out. He's a big physical guy that has a great gas tank, and he's got the mentality. If this guy just goes barge mode at all of his opponents, he could be a champion. He'll take enough damage to last a lifetime. He'll take enough damage that would equate to the damage that you're going to take in 10 fights as opposed to 3, but he'll become a world champion. My point is, when you have Marvin Vettori out there outstriking you, that's an ugly, ugly look going into a Nassourdine Imavov fight with a guy that's just so slick. Imavov's got the finesse. He's so fast with his jab. He's got good boxing. And I really do believe that the long, rangy style, the kicks and the jabs are going to be an issue for him, because it proved to be an issue against Trevin Giles. I mean, if I'm looking at Nassourdine Imavov's best weapons, which would be the jab, the front kicks, he's got decent volume. He's definitely reared back on the volume a little bit, but still more volume than Trevin Giles. Trevin Giles is like a Walmart version of Nassourdine Imavov, and he beat Roman Dolidze. He survived a grappling exchange with Roman Dolidze too. And it's like, who's Dolidze beating? He's beating the guys that are foolish enough to go to the ground with him, that are just giving him the win. They're saying, hey, good fight already, but it's time for you to win, man. Yep, I'm going to let you. Like, what is going on? I don't think Nassourdine Imavov is just going to give Roman Dolidze this win, because that's really what these guys are doing. The jabs, the long-rangey striking, it proved to be a style that gave him issues against Jack Hermansson. Hermansson was just cracking him with body kicks and snapping him with the jab. And, of course, Hermansson was just insisting on going for takedowns. And I just don't see that happening in this fight. I think Imavov will be able to outstrike Roman Dolidze, who's just stuck in the mud. He really is. This guy is really just a big oaf, slugging himself along the octagon, insisting on throwing big, meaty right hands, and I think he's going to get busted up. What it's really going to come down to is the fact that Roman Dolidze's wrestling just isn't there. This is not a guy that shoots a lot of takedowns. He reminds me of Ortega, whereas Ortega even has better takedowns than Dolidze. Ortega took down Volkanovski, he took down Max, he took down TKZ, he took down Yair Rodriguez, but Ortega just doesn't shoot enough takedowns. Roman Dolidze's issue is that he also doesn't shoot enough takedowns, and even when he does, his takedowns aren't great. It's like if he misses one takedown, he will just neglect it for the rest of the round. And Imavov has improved on his takedown defense. He showed that against Ian Heinisch, who he did TKO in the second round of their fight. Ian Heinisch is another big guy that has some ability to wrestle. Imavov got taken down a couple of times by Sean Strickland, popped right back up to his feet. And offensively, man, it's not like Imavov can't grapple either. I mean, this guy has taken down Chris Curtis, who has brick wall takedown defense in his own right, and he took his back and just had his way with him. Imavov destroyed Edmund Shabazian on the ground as well. I mean, this is a guy that does have some pretty good grappling. I think he's going to have the ability to stuff Roman Dolidze's takedowns, and it's not like he's Mr. Speedy Gonzalez with his entries, and he's not Mr. Slick. He's not got great wrestling. He's a big bruiser that's going to have a real difficult time closing the distance on Imavov, who's really just going to be sticking behind his jab, his front kicks. And I think we're going to see Roman Dolidze's nose get busted up, get bloodied up. And Imavov is going to win this fight 50-45. 50-45. Dolidze's got a big bruiser-cruiser's chance, and I just don't see him getting that takedown, man. If he goes in here, he puts his hard hat on, he puts his wrestling shoes on, and he imposes his will and just shoots 5 takedowns around, I think he is going to be able to make something happen. I think he will be able to get a finish because, of course, this guy's just nasty on the ground. If Nassourdine Imavov tries to take Roman down, he's going to lose. He could get submitted. But I think that Imavov is a smart fighter. He looked phenomenal in his last outing against Chris Curtis, who is a better striker than Roman. Chris Curtis is almost like Plotty in his own right. Of course, a much shorter guy, shorter reach, but a Plotty guy in his own right doesn't really move around a whole lot, but just has really crisp boxing. And look at what Imavov did to him, right? Imavov was crashing forward on Chris Curtis, who's the guy that likes to get in on the inside and dirty box. And Imavov was kind of out dirty boxing Chris Curtis. I do believe Imavov will be able to make Roman Dolidze look like a fool. Again, you're getting outstruck and outclassed on the feet against Marvin Vettori. I mean, this is a clear cut and dry. The case is done. Roman Dolidze's getting his ass kicked for 5 rounds. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Imavov's just too slick. And just expect 5 rounds of whooping. Until next time.